Indie film is a concept that people are comfortable with and familiar with, but indie TV seems a bit newer. For Mark and Mel, how would you describe indie TV to people, and how did you decide to get started with it?
Indie TV is doing something on your own. I think for us, it came out of, it's just been a couple of crazy years in this industry, and a lot of fear in the industry about what to say yes to. And I think everybody trying to figure out what they're doing post, pandemic, post strike. And at a certain point, Mark and I were like, what if we approach TV in the way that we do our films, and we invest in ourselves and we become the creators, or we find amazing voices who are willing to get down and dirty with us in the TV space. And rather than go and try and pitch and go through the whole thing and be like, buy our pilot, let's shoot that, now let's see if we can do a show, we were like, let's be crazy and just shoot the whole series all at once, like a long movie.
Yeah, and I think one thing we're figuring out is like independent film, it's like, oh, you know what, this thing is maybe a little outside of the box of what people expect, so we're forced to go find an alternate route. There's actually even more advantages to making TV independently, because there's just so many loops you have to jump through in order to get your thing made. First you sell the script, and if they like it, then they give you notes on the script. And then if you're lucky, they give you money to make the pilot. And then if you're really, really lucky, they let you make a full season of your show, but at that point it probably doesn't resemble the thing that you wanted to make in the first place. So that's the positive. The negative is, like, as you might expect, and why people haven't done it before, is it's an incredible amount of work and it's a lot more expensive. So you have to find creators, like these lovely people on the couch here, who are willing to kind of go in with us and just be like, all right, let's just gamble together.
And I always imagine one of the biggest difficulties would be simple distribution. What are some of the strategies for that, and does coming to South by help in that regard? It's almost like a 90s Sundance for indie television.
That's right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's like Sundance happened in the early 90s. Everybody's like, what's going to happen? Are we just going to go see independent films? Then people like them, and then all of a sudden this whole industry sprung up around it, because they were hitting this pain point that everybody was feeling in the 80s and the 90s, which is like, there are a lot of interesting movies we want to make, but they're not really finding a place for them, in particular a distribution system. So I think what we saw in the 90s was like, yeah, some big distributors bought the movies, but there were all these other wonderful films, so a whole bunch of companies sprung up. So we don't know what's going to happen here, but our hope is that, yes, people like Netflix and HBO and the big streamers will say, you know what, we've stopped making these sort of like mid-level shows because we're forced to keep our subscribers and go for Game of Thrones and feed it to them. But if they see that these shows are working, that audiences like them, they'll not only buy these shows, but the ones that they don't buy, then there'll be other people, even streaming services like Mubi that are coming up, who can say, you know what, we can get these and they're not as expensive as the other things. And maybe a new ecosystem can form in the way that Magnolia and IFC and all of that formed out of the independent film movement.
Barret, I was wondering if you could tell me how the idea for The Long Night came about, and how would you describe it to people?
Great question. Well, I just piggyback a little bit on what they're saying about independent television. I am a big fan of French Impressionist painting, and what they did at that time, and I kind of akin this a little bit to what happened there with making these side exhibitions of Impressionist paintings, which Berta Marisot and Monet and the ones we know did. I just think there's so much room for the big shows that have the big budgets, and these little shows, like mine is a micro show. And the way it came about is that Mel and Mark have this kind of genius ability to keep their eyes out for people like us who make stuff anyway. And we make stuff even if we have $10 and some duct tape and, or some shaving cream. Yeah, I've seen your show. And they followed my playwriting for decades, and watching my little plays that I put together for $100 or $200. And they came along and said, if we gave you a little boost, if we gave you a little extra to put on, not at the Salon in France, but at the Impressionist Gallery, could you make something for us with this very limited palette? And for me, it was a dream come true, and is a dream come true just to be here. So that's how I was handed a limited palette. This is what we have, and I was able to write inside that delightful palette.
For people who have not gotten to see the show yet, have you written the whole series, as Mark was saying? And then what would you compare it to?
I love. Yes. Well, I wrote the whole first season, and we shot the whole first season, and it's all complete, which is this new model that they're pioneering. I don't know what to compare it to. I think it brings in a little bit of the best of like Lower East Side, downtown New York theater, like La Mama theater, but also has like short story elements, and then hopefully is its own thing. I think it has a little bit in relation to Language Lessons, a film they put out a few years ago, in that we use actors filming themselves in very small micro casts, micro crews. Like, how little footprint can we have, not only on production costs but also on the earth.
Wow, I can't wait to see it. That sounds sick.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I want to share it with
I'm
you.
Bro,
stoked,
it's sick.
yeah.
Have you guys seen all
Yes.
4? Have you seen each other's stuff yet?
We haven't.
haven't.
No.
Mm-mm.
Well, Monday will be the first time.
Yeah, I
I'll
can't
get to
wait.
see
So
it.
Mel,
Yeah.
Mel and I are like parents who have multiple families, and we don't tell the other families about each other, you know?
Yeah.
So this is that Thanksgiving where everybody showed up, and they're
Yeah.
like, whoa, are we?
We're
Are
brothers
we
and
stepbrothers
sisters.
and stepsisters? This is
Yeah.
fucked up, guys. This is weird.
That's why
Yeah.
that's why we sit up here.
I recognize your bone structure.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Wait a
Don't
second.
think too hard on it.
Well, then I have information that might shred your minds. I've seen The Long Night. I've seen the broadcast.
Oh.
Don't tell us what your favorite is.
And I have a clear favorite, and I'm going to say it right now. Having said that, I did just say I've seen the broadcast. I don't know if I could describe the broadcast. So, Natalie
easy.
and Courtney, how would you describe the broadcast to people?
I like to describe it as a what is it is a semi-autobiographical dramedy about two complicated women in a toxic relationship. But it's
in a
also
dystopian,
in a dystopian
sci-fi future where they are scientists and also the last two people who are allowed to like put out the news to the
Yeah.
entire world.
But it's very absurd, but we try to play it for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And play up the melodrama, and we love like what happened to Baby Jane and like old.
Yeah,
like,
we pulled from a lot of different films that we were inspired by, and also just wrote it really fast and made it so fast to where we didn't even question some of the
We
things
were
we
writing.
were doing for better or for
we actually have a
worse.
whole episode that just went into the trash that Mark was like, we might want to do something different for this one. And we were like, yeah. But yeah, Coco makes fun of us because when we were writing, we just go, and then.
Yeah.
But I actually think the show structure is pretty good.
Each
like,
episode
considering.
has sort of
Yeah.
a different theme, and there's a twist at the end of the pilot that is sort of propelling this strange world that they're in, which is actually just a white psych with theatrical flats that we moved around to become this like this space that these women are existing in. That doesn't
their
really
pod.
Yeah, their pod. Yeah.
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 But like Mark was saying, like the TV development world, it can be so excruciating. And like we've had a couple shows in development that just like don't go anywhere. And the way we make our shows is very DIY. And so when Mark came to us and said, if you can think of a show that takes place in one location, I'll make it. And so we were stoked on that. And then we just got right after it. And he was like, we could just shoot the pilot or we could shoot 6 episodes. And we were like, let's just go for it.
It was so fast.
Yeah.
Because I saw Natalie's like one-person show that she had done, and I was like, this is incredible. I want to work with this person, and I think I got your number from somebody, and I just called.
I think we messaged on Twitter.
That's what it was.
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah.
And you know,
And we Zoomed.
I was like, assuming that she makes like good money and so like developing in TV, and I was like, she's not gonna want to do this, but I was like, I'll just offer this thing, and then like 3 days later,
Yeah.
you were like, okay, I got the idea, and it's my friend Coco, and we're gonna do this, and I was like, okay, and then we were shooting quickly.
Yeah.
We turned over the attic to our office to you guys at a certain point.
And
and
we
shit
made
just got weird up there. Like,
it's it's a unique show.
yeah.
And yeah, weird.
Yes.
I love this show.
Newman
you.
kept saying that the scripts were very dense.
Yeah, our producer / AD just kept using the word dense over and over in a loving way.
Yeah, we got a lot of, it's like a gag-packed show, and it is very silly and stupid. And yeah, we just had so much fun making it. And I think we pitched Mark saying it was like 1984 meets Three Stooges meets
Eraserhead.
Eraserhead.
I think that's really good.
It's so good.
I used to say, but it's like kind of like the alt clown comedy version of what Broad City did. I think that I say that because that gives us a better chance of selling the show than 1984 meets Eraserhead. But I think they're both true. That's what I think. Yeah.
Well, if you'll allow me, I'd like to add to the pile. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I'm going with Welcome to Night Vale meets Looney Tunes.
Oh, that's a huge compliment.
We did have a lot of
It's
cartoon
interesting.
inspiration.
Yeah,
so
we
that-
both love doing physical comedy, and so yeah.
I think the trick was like creating a world in which anything could happen and that we could play in the way that we know that we can.
So
Yeah.
I think when Mark pitched me the show, he's like, they're clowns. And I was like, you mean like clowns? He's like, no, you'll get it when you see it.
Yeah, it's having its moment, clown.
Yeah.
Right now.
Mark and Mel, if you could tell us a little bit more about Penelope and the other series, Riley Walker and Friends.
Yeah, I can start with Penelope. Early in the pandemic, which is honestly, I think, where all of these shows started, because Mark and I can't sit still, and when we're thrown a challenge, which is like now we're stuck at home, we're like, well, how do we make something still? And one of those was Penelope, which came from Mark being stuck at home with his daughters and his parents, and they're all watching this show alone, the survival show. And he's watching all three generations be riveted as if they're watching like the Game of Thrones finale. And somebody's just learning to build a fire for like 5 minutes. And we were all like feeling this need for escapism. I want to run away and go live in the woods every other day. So it all kind of came from that. Mark had this beautiful idea about a 16-year-old girl who runs away to go make a new life for herself in the woods, Penelope. And then he brought it to me, and then we kind of made it our baby together, and then went and shot all 8 episodes in the mountains of Washington State. And it was wild.
Yeah, Mel directed all of them, and that's part of how this model works, is like having creators who are willing to go in for essentially, no money and invest in this thing, and then we hope, for not only creative success, but, afterwards, that if we can sell the show, then we can share a lot of the profits with, our cast and crew and all that stuff. That's kind of what we've done in an independent film for a while.
And I love making stuff that way, because for me, like, maybe this is bad to say, but, I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it to make, just like what inspires me and what I think is funny and what will bring people joy. And yeah.
Well, I'll take your money when I sell your show.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. It's going to be good.
It's okay.
I need money. I need money.
Yeah, I like that.
Everybody can have my share.
And the last of our children is Riley Walker and Friends. It's a docu-series. There's a musician named Riley Walker that I've loved for years, and he's kind of one of the best musicians you never heard of. And it was really interesting. I used to be a musician, and I watched him when he turned 30 kind of start to question, like, why am I doing this? My back hurts. There's no money in this. Like, this music that I love, is it going to destroy me? And so each episode follows Riley sort of sitting with a different musician and walking through how they feel about the business. Sometimes they write a song together. Sometimes they just play music together. And it was sort of inspired by my love of, kind of a absurdist but very naturalistic and insightful shows like Fishing with John and How To with John Wilson. And so like that sort of understated personal portrait thing. And I've never directed a documentary before. We've done a lot of producing, but it was my first time directing something. So it was really fun.
I'm actually glad you brought up the producing all these documentaries, because that's some of my favorite Duplass Productions output when it comes to TV. You guys have a lot of just excellent docuseries, and I'm wondering what goes into finding like a true crime adjacent subject that is compelling and riveting but not exploitative.
It's a really good question, and I think the exploitative portion of that is critical right now. As to how they come to us, I've always been a documentary fan, but we never really directed them or made them. And a good friend of ours named Josh Braun, who does a lot with documentaries, he brought us these two young brothers who were in their early to mid 20s, and this story, Wild Wild Country, about like 6 or 7 years ago. And he was honest. He was like, the story's great, the filmmakers are great, like no one will buy this thing from us, and we know you love documentaries. Can you like put the Duplass name on it and like help them in case they need help along the way? And so we're like, sure. So we brought it to Netflix and we were able to sell it. And I thought, oh God, these kids are in their young 20s, like we're gonna need to hold their hands the whole way. And I was totally wrong, and they were geniuses, and we had to do very, very little. So we then oddly found ourselves in this position of relative power in the documentary world. Like, we just won the Emmy, so now we can go make things. So the good news about that is that things come to us now. We don't have to go hunt them down. But the bad news, to your point, is that most people who are working in the true crime space, I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people working in the true crime space are just looking to cash in on the popularity of the thing, and they find themselves adjacent to some story that's interesting, or they want to get rights to it, and they're not really considering the why of why they want to tell it, other than, I think I can sell this and make a living doing this. And that's where the sort of exploitative, or just frankly bad documentary faction comes in. So we just have to be really, really careful about what we pick and choose. And so we're very selective about what we do. But it's really been an unexpected and awesome part of our, what we do.
It's an honor to have made the selection.
Because yours is a documentary.
Oh, yeah, kind of.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think about it, and the docs are where we started forming indie TV in our world. We had these amazing concepts coming to us with, directors that it was their first time. They'd been following a story for 7 years. You could feel the heart and the soul, and nobody would finance it. So that's when we started to say, well, let's invest in these TV shows. And we're like, well, if this works in doc, could we do this in fiction? And so that was the first starting point, I feel like, was in the doc space.
Yeah, it was that and animals.
Oh yeah, animals. Right.
Thanks so much. That's all we have time for.
Thank
this is all
you.
done.
Thank you.
What a
Thanks for having
delight.
us. And I care about money.
Yeah.